Hello, friends. You're watching The Night Watchman, where every day you'll hear a brand new horror story that will send chills down your spine. But to keep bringing you these terrifying tales, we need your love and support. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's begin the story. I never thought my life would shrink down to a single street corner. The one with the flickering lamppost, the stale coffee smell, and the neon pink glow of the Dunkin Donuts sign that buzzed like an insect stuck in a glass. But that's exactly where everything started. Long before things went wrong. Before the fear, before the nights when I couldn't sleep because shadows in the hallway sounded too familiar. My name is Lucas Armand, and in the winter of 2021, I was 23 years old, broke, lonely, and working the graveyard shift at a Dunkin Donuts on Lakeview Road in the small town of Carrington, Ohio. People imagine small towns as peaceful, but they don't know the quiet here. The kind that makes you feel like the whole world forgot you existed. And honestly, at that point in my life, I wasn't sure I'd mind if it had. My parents died 2 years earlier in a fire. A space heater malfunctioned in their apartment while I was on the other side of town working a double shift at a hardware store. By the time I arrived, the whole building was engulfed. For months, I'd wake up hearing the crackling that wasn't there anymore. I had no siblings, no close relatives besides an aunt in Florida who sent me Christmas cards but never called, and no real plan for the future. So I drifted. I floated from job to job until I landed at Dunkin' because it was open 24/7 and needed night staff. The pay sucked. The hours sucked worse. But the solitude, that was the part I didn't mind. I lived alone in a studio apartment above a pawn shop. Cheap rent, thin walls, a window that rattled when trucks passed. Most nights, the only people I talked to were customers who barely looked at me, co-workers who rotated out every month, and strangers on the internet. And that's how this whole story begins, with strangers on the internet. I wasn't even a big social media person, but loneliness. Loneliness makes you do stupid things just to feel connected. I used to scroll Twitter during my breaks, half asleep, half bored, half irritated at how fake everything felt. One night, a trend was blowing up. Unpopular K-pop opinions. I didn't hate K-pop, I barely knew anything about it. But I was tired, annoyed, and frustrated with life enough that I typed the dumbest thing possible. K-pop fans treat manufactured music like religion. Y'all scare me more than horror movies. It felt harmless. A stupid vent tweet posted at 2:13 a.m. while wiping glaze off my apron. I put my phone down, finished making the next batch of donuts, and forgot about it until I checked again at 4 a.m. Notifications exploded, hundreds, then thousands. My stomach twisted. There were insults, mockery, death threats. But one reply chilled me more than anything. "We know who you are." I deleted the tweet. Then I deleted my entire account. Then I told myself it would blow over. And for a while it did. 3 weeks passed. Carrington was cold and quiet as always. My shifts were predictable. Mop floors, brew coffee, refill donut racks, deal with drunk customers looking for carbs at 1:30 a.m., repeat. My coworkers barely talked. Darren, the shift lead, was a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a divorce anger problem. Kaylee, a 19-year-old college student, worked weekend nights and always wore earbuds. Then there was me, the guy who kept his head down and tried not to think too much. Loneliness started eating at me again, so I downloaded Omega Chat, a random video chat site like Omegle, but safer. Supposedly, I set some interests: movies, cooking, journaling. Most calls were awkward or boring, until the 15th one that night. The cam connected, a girl appeared. She looked around my age, maybe 20 or 21, Asian, with long black hair and bangs. She sat in a pastel blue room filled with plushies and fairy lights. A silver necklace shaped like a star hung around her throat. She gave me a shy smile. "Hi," she said. I smiled back. "Hey." Her name was Mina. She was from Chicago, studying graphic design. She spoke softly, choosing every word like it mattered. We talked about movies. We talked about music. She asked what I did for work. I told her I worked night shift at Dunkin Donuts. She laughed softly. "Do you get to take home leftover donuts?" Sometimes. What's your favorite? Boston creme. Good choice. Her voice was gentle. Her eyes stayed warm. That's what threw me off later. How normal she seemed. Then just as I was about to end the call, for my break to finish, she tilted her head slightly. Lucas, right? My hands froze on the keyboard. I had not given her my name. She smiled again, still soft, but something else behind it. You're Lucas Armand, right? The one from Twitter? My lungs emptied. I don't use Twitter anymore, I said quietly. But you did, she murmured. You said something mean. My pulse hammered in my ears. I think you have the wrong person. No, she whispered, I don't. The way she said it, cold, confident, certain. I closed the laptop so hard the lid slapped. My reflection stared back in the black screen. Wide eyes, pale face, lips parted like I'd seen a ghost for the rest of the night. Every sound in the shop made me jump. I tried to forget her, tried to convince myself she was guessing. But the next night, when I logged into Omega Chat again, stupid, I know, I found a message notification. Don't hide. Omega Chat didn't allow messaging. You couldn't contact people after disconnecting. And yet, there it was. I closed the laptop again. For the next few days, nothing happened. I forced myself to believe I was being paranoid. And then one night around 3:27 a.m., the front door chimed. A girl in a knit beanie and oversized hoodie walked in. Her hair was long, black, straight. She kept her head down. But when she lifted her gaze, my heart stuttered. It was her, Mina, the girl from Omega Chat. She didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't speak. She just placed a $10 bill on the counter. Small iced latte, she whispered. Her voice was exactly the same. I made the drink with shaking hands. She didn't look away from me the entire time. And when I handed it to her, her fingers brushed mine deliberately, cold, icy cold. She turned to leave, but right before exiting, she stopped. She didn't face me, just stood with her back toward the door, shoulders rigid. I told them you were different, she murmured. What? Who? She didn't answer. She stepped outside and walked into the dark parking lot until she vanished between two cars. 2 nights later, it happened. I was cleaning the donut fryer around 2:50 a.m. The shop was silent except for the low hum of the freezers. Then, crash. The front window shattered inward. Glass exploded across the tiles. A brick clattered to a stop near the counter. I ducked behind the register, heart pounding. No one came in. No one ran off. Just silence and cold air pouring in. When I crawled out and grabbed the brick, I saw a black marker scrawled on one side. We see you. I called the police. They took 23 minutes to arrive. Probably teens, Officer Morales said. Prank. TikTok challenge. He smirked while writing the report. I didn't correct him, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The next night ruined everything. The shop was empty again, the air thick with fryer fumes and vanilla syrup. I was refilling napkin dispensers when motion caught my eye through the window. A group of 6 people stood outside, all young, all wearing black hoodies, all staring straight at me. At first I thought robbery or vandalism. Then music started playing. Loud, K-pop, some upbeat bubblegum track. The group began to dance, perfectly coordinated, sharp moves, synchronized steps. Right there, in the empty parking lot at 3 a.m. And in the center, Mina. She didn't dance. She just watched me, unblinking, expressionless. When the song ended, the group lifted their hands and made a slicing motion across their throats. Then they walked away calmly. No running, no laughing. Like it was rehearsed, like it was a warning. Over the next week, I found flyers around town, telephone poles, bus stops, gas station walls. My picture, screen grabbed from some old account. My tweet printed beneath it, and in red ink, do not let him speak again. I quit Twitter, I deleted Omega Chat. I made my profiles private, but the damage was done. I installed 3 extra locks on my apartment door. I barely slept. Every time someone knocked, I startled. Every time someone walked behind me on the street, my chest tightened. Co-workers noticed. You good? Kaylee asked me once. Yeah, I lied. My voice cracked when I said it. It was exactly 1:52 a.m. Cold, windy. My apartment building dark except for the exit sign on the stairwell. I lay awake on my mattress, listening to distant traffic and the hum of the pawn shop's neon sign outside. Then, scratch, right at my door. A slow, deliberate dragging sound. Then, tap, tap, tap. I sat up so fast my vision blurred. The doorknob shook, then twisted. Someone whispered outside, too soft to hear words, but more than one voice, at least three. I grabbed my phone with trembling fingers, but before I could call 911, click, not the deadbolt, the lockpick. They were picking my lock. No, 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 I whispered. I shoved my dresser against the door. The voices giggled, then the scratching stopped. Silence. I turned, slowly, to the window behind me. The latch was unlocked. The frame was sliding up. Cold air rushed in, and one by one, dark hooded shapes climbed through. 4 of them, silent, shadow-like. Mina stepped in last. Her face was pale, expression empty. She held a lighter between her fingers, flicked it on. The tiny flame lit her eyes. "Say it," she whispered. My throat closed. I was wrong." Louder. "I was wrong." Tears burned down my face. "I'm sorry. I respect your music. I respect everything. I swear I won't say anything again." The flame dimmed as she closed the lighter. She smiled gently, a soft, motherly smile. Then she nodded, and without a word they filed out through the window and disappeared into the night. That was 4 months ago. I moved apartments, changed my phone number, stopped posting online entirely. I don't even comment on YouTube videos. I still work at the Dunkin'. But the late shifts feel heavier now. Shadows seem to move differently. Reflections linger too long in the stainless steel surfaces. Sometimes when I'm sweeping outside after closing, I swear I see a girl standing across the parking lot. Long hair, black hoodie, unblinking. I don't look too long. I don't want her to think I'm ignoring her. I learned my lesson. You can say something in 1 second that ruins your life into 10,000 people. Think horror lives in haunted houses or woods. But sometimes, horror tracks your IP address, finds your workplace, studies your schedule, learns your routines. Horror smiles sweetly through a webcam before it knocks on your real door. I never speak online anymore. Some nights I don't speak at all because silence is the safest language I have left. Story 2. I never thought the place where I used to buy cheap coffee and sit quietly doing homework would end up haunting every part of my life. It's strange how the most ordinary places can carry the darkest memories. People imagine horror in abandoned houses, forests, graveyards, but not in a Dunkin Donuts across from a dead cornfield in a sleepy Massachusetts suburb. But that's exactly where it happened. I grew up in a small town called Maple Grove, maybe 40 minutes outside Worcester. Quiet, safe. Predictable kids rode their bikes past the same white-painted fences. Neighbors mowed their lawns every Saturday morning. The old retired couple across the street sat on their porch, rain or shine. It was the kind of place where you could hear a car coming from a mile away. Back then, I was 15, a scrawny sophomore at Maple Grove High. My life revolved around my 3 closest friends, Jace, Marshall, and Evan. We all lived within a couple blocks of each other, and we were the type of kids who didn't fit neatly into any social group. We weren't athletes. We weren't geniuses. We weren't misfits either. Just quiet boys who minded our own business, bonded by video games, dumb jokes, and our shared lack of popularity. My home life wasn't anything special either. My parents divorced when I was 9. One of those divorces where nobody screams, nobody fights, but the silence between them becomes so unbearable that it feels like yelling. I lived with my mom. She worked long hours at the hospital in the next town over, so most nights I made my own dinner and kept myself busy. She loved me, no doubt, but she was exhausted most of the time. Maybe that's why I spent so much time with my friends. Their houses felt warmer, less empty. That October felt different from the others. Colder, drier. The leaves fell faster, turning Maple Grove into a crunchy carpet of orange and red. Halloween decorations went up early. Blow-up pumpkins, fake skeletons hanging from trees, that sort of thing. School was getting busier too. with midterms approaching. But what I remember most from that time was the constant heaviness I couldn't shake. Like my life was about to change, and not in a good way. I didn't know then what was waiting for me. I didn't know what waited in the dark, or in the corn, or inside that Dunkin'. It was the Friday before Halloween when it happened. We had gone to the Maple Grove High homecoming football game, not because we wanted to, but because everyone else went, and we didn't want to look weird staying home. The game itself didn't matter. Our team usually lost anyway. But it was something to do. The air that night was sharp, the kind that stings your nose a little. I was wearing an oversized gray hoodie with frayed cuffs. Jace had his old varsity jacket his older brother passed down to him. Marshall wore 3 layers even though he never admitted he was always cold. And Evan had his usual beanie pulled halfway down his ears, complaining about the temperature the whole time. We barely watched the game. Mostly we stood near the bleachers, talking, laughing at stupid things, occasionally walking around the field just to kill time. After maybe half an hour, Evan said what we were all thinking. "Want to leave? I'm bored out of my mind." Marshall stretched his arms. "Please, I'm freezing my ass off." Jace smirked. "Yeah, let's go. I'm starving." I shrugged. "Where are we going?" "Everything closes early." "There's the Dunkin' on Old Cranberry Road," Evan said. "It's open all night." We knew the one. Everyone did. It was the only 24/7 spot in Maple Grove. Small, slightly outdated, with flickering purple neon in the windows, and a parking lot that always felt too empty at night. It sat right across from Merritt Family Farm, which had a massive cornfield that turned into a maze every October. Families came during the day. At night it shut down completely, at least it was supposed to. We left the school and started walking. It was a long walk, maybe 40 minutes through quiet streets, our breath puffing out in small clouds. The town felt unusually silent that night. Even the usual distant barking of dogs was gone. By the time we reached Old Cranberry Road, the streetlights had thinned out, leaving long pockets of darkness between each glowing yellow halo. The Dunkin' sign buzzed faintly, casting a pinkish light over the parking lot. There were no cars. None. Not even the employees. Jace muttered, slowing down. "Why is it this empty? On a Friday night?" Marshall frowned. "Maybe they're understaffed again." Evan cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, "Hello! Anyone home?" I elbowed him. "Dude, stop!" He grinned. "What? I like to make an entrance." As we stepped closer, I noticed something that made me pause. The store lights were on. The coffee machines inside were humming. The donut racks were full. Everything was exactly how it looked during normal hours. Except for one thing. No movement, no sound. Not even from the back. "I don't like this," I whispered. But Evan, always the fearless one, pulled open the door. It wasn't locked. The bell above the entrance chimed cheerfully, the sound unnervingly out of place in the dead silence. We stepped inside and immediately I felt it. That subtle, buzzing pressure in the air, like static before a storm. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. "Hello?" Jace called out. Nothing. Marshall walked toward the counter and leaned over, peering into the kitchen doorway. Maybe someone stepped out. "Not with the lights on like this," I whispered. "Not with the machines running." Then I saw it. On the edge of the swinging door to the kitchen, a smear of red. Not bright red, dark red, thick, dried around the edges. My breath hitched. "Guys, look." They turned. Evan's smile faded instantly. "That's, ketchup?" He tried. Jace shook his head. "That's not ketchup, Ev." Marshall stepped back from the counter, pale. "We should go." Evan looked torn. "Yeah, but no," I said firmly. "We're leaving." We walked backward toward the door. Even Evan didn't argue. And that's when we heard it. A sound from outside. A long, heavy dragging sound, like something was being pulled across the gravel. We froze. "What the hell was that?" Jace whispered. Evan pushed the door open a crack and peeked outside. His eyes went wide. "You guys, look." We all looked through the glass. Across the road, the entrance gate into the Merritt Farm corn maze was wide open, swinging slowly in the wind, and something, was standing near the edge of the field. A figure, not moving, just watching. Even from across the road, I could feel its focus on us, like its gaze had weight. Evan whispered, "No way, I am not going near that maze." But Jace squinted. "Hold on, is that someone hurt? Maybe that's why the Dunkin is empty." Marshall shook his head violently. No, don't even think." "We should check," Jace insisted. "What if someone needs help?" I wish we had just ran home. I wish someone had stopped him. I wish I had been braver, not in going forward, but in saying no. But Jace was already crossing the road. "God damn it," Marshall muttered. "I'm not letting him go alone." He followed Evan's side. "This is stupid as hell," he said, then jogged after them. And me? I stood there, torn between fear and loyalty. Then I thought about my dad, who always said, "Cowardice isn't running away. Cowardice is leaving your people behind." So even though my stomach twisted and my hands were trembling, I followed them. The closer we got to the maze entrance, the colder the air felt. Not normal cold, an unnatural stillness, like even the insects refused to make a sound. The figure near the cornfield had vanished. Just gone. "What the hell?" Evan whispered. The gate creaked softly as it swayed. A wooden sign above it read, "Merritt's Corn Maze, last entry, 8 p.m. It was 11:48 p.m. "This is a bad idea," I said. "A really bad idea." Jay shook his head. "Let's just check the front section. If we see nobody, we go." Marshall swallowed. "Okay, but nobody splits up." "Agreed," Evan said, unusually serious. We walked through the gate together, stepping onto the dirt path lined with towering corn. The solar lamps along the first few feet flickered weakly, casting long, stuttering shadows that made the stalks look alive. The smell hit me first: rot, wet soil, something metallic beneath it. "Guys," I whispered, "we shouldn't..." And then, from deep inside the maze, crunch. A footstep, deliberate, slow. We froze. Another crunch, and another. Jace whispered shakily, "Someone's in there." Evan grabbed his arm. "Which means we leave." But before we could turn around, a voice drifted out low, raspy, male. "You're not supposed to be here." My blood turned to ice. Marshall's breath hitched. Who said that?" The corn stalks rustled slowly, as if something large was brushing past them. Then, crunch behind us. We whirled around. A man stood about 20 feet away on the path, or something shaped like a man. He was tall, taller than anyone I'd ever seen, wearing a filthy, faded Carhartt jacket, torn jeans, and old brown work boots covered in mud. His face was half hidden in shadow, but his eyes glowed slightly in the dim light, wide, unblinking, and smiling. A slow, unnatural smile that stretched too far. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Run!" I whispered, but the man tilted his head. Then he started walking toward us. Not running, just walking, and somehow that was worse. Jay stuttered, "Go! Go!" We ran, hard, blindly turning corners, crashing into each other, panting, gasping, stumbling. The maze twisted endlessly. The corn brushed against us like hands. Every time we slowed, crunch, closer and closer. "He's following us," Evan shouted. "No shit," Marshall yelled. We reached a three-way split, left, right, straight. "Which way?" I cried. We didn't know. We had no idea. "Straight!" Jace yelled. We burst through the center path, dirt kicking up beneath our sneakers. Then, a scream, not from us, from behind. A horrible, wet, choking scream. Evan faltered. "What? Who was..." Marshall whipped around. "Jace!" Jace wasn't with us. Oh God, we had lost him. "Jace!" I screamed, voice cracking. The maze swallowed my voice whole. Another scream tore through the air, higher, ragged, then cut short. Just silence. Marshall's knees buckled. "No, no, 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 no!" Evan grabbed him. "We have to go back." "Are you insane?" I grabbed both of them. "If we go back, we die." "But he's gone," I yelled. "We have to get help." Evan's eyes were wild. "We can't leave him." A rustle behind us. Heavy footsteps, coming closer. "I'm sorry," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. "I'm so sorry." We ran again. Branches scraped our arms. Corn scraped our faces. Every direction looked the same. I didn't realize we were nearing the center until the path widened into a circular clearing, 10, maybe 12 feet across. And in the dirt, something lay there. Jace's phone, smashed to pieces, still buzzing faintly, but no Jace. "No!" Marshall whispered. Evan's voice cracked. "We're gonna die in here." "We're not!" I clenched my fists. "We need to climb the corn. If we can see the road." But before I finished, the footsteps stopped. Dead silent. We weren't alone. The man stepped into the clearing, closer than he had ever been, maybe 10 feet away, his smile wider, his breathing slow, deliberate. He whispered, "Don't run." We ran anyway. The maze felt endless. My lungs burned, my legs trembled. The world spun around me. Every turn looked identical, my vision blurred. "This way," Evan screamed. We turned left, then right. Then, ahead of us, through the gaps of corn, a faint glow, a streetlight. "The exit!" Marshall cried. We sprinted. We tore through the last row of stalks and stumbled into the open field beside the maze. The Dunkin sign buzzed across the road. The parking lot lights flickered. We didn't stop running until we were halfway down Old Cranberry Road. Only then did we collapse onto somebody's lawn, gasping, coughing, sobbing. We didn't speak for a long time. Eventually, Evan whispered, "Where's Jace?" No one answered. We called 911. The police searched the maze all night and into the morning. They found nothing. No man, no footprints, no blood, no sign of struggle, not even Jace. Just that clearing, just his smashed phone. The Merritt farm closed down permanently. Boards went up. Fences were added. The cornfields were bulldozed the following summer. But Jace was never found. Police said he ran away. His parents moved out of town 3 months later. But I know what I saw. We all do. That thing wasn't human. And sometimes when I pass a Dunkin Donuts late at night and see the empty parking lot, the humming machines, the stillness, I feel eyes on me again wide, unblinking, smiling, watching from the dark, waiting. And I know one day it will come back, for one of us, or for me. Story 3, I was never built for mornings. That's the first thing you should know about me. I wasn't the kind of person who woke up glowing at 5 a.m., stretching like some fitness influencer from a Manhattan loft. I was the opposite. Perpetually tired, slightly disorganized, someone who lived off caffeine and whatever leftover takeout happened to be in the fridge. My name is Alyssa Hartman. I'm 26, and last year I lived on the east side of Riverview, Illinois, in an apartment complex that looked like it was designed by someone who gave up halfway through. Every morning, I worked the opening shift at a Dunkin Donuts off Harper Avenue, a store with flickering lights, old floor tiles, and a drive-through speaker that glitched every time a diesel truck pulled up. But it paid my rent, barely, and that meant I showed up, even when I hated it. Even when I felt like the world was trying to warn me not to. I hadn't always lived alone. I used to live with my mom and my younger brother Adam in a different part of Riverview. The part people actually wanted to live in, but things changed after Mom got diagnosed. I was 20 then, working part-time at a craft store, going to community college. When she passed, Adam went to stay with our aunt in Milwaukee, and I dropped out to work full-time. Everything felt like it happened too fast, like someone had picked up my life and shaken it like a snow globe. Grief is strange. It doesn't hit you all at once. It wears you down slowly, like a tide. By 25, I was scraping by on night and morning shifts, paying rent on a small apartment that smelled like the previous tenant had smoked for 20 years straight. I didn't own a car. I couldn't afford one, so I walked everywhere. Rain, snow, it didn't matter. The Dunkin I worked at opened at 5:30 a.m., so I left home around 4:40. It was a 35-minute walk, or 25 if I cut through the wooded path behind Marlowe Park. And trust me, those 10 minutes meant everything when you're exhausted and running on cheap coffee. I'd taken that shortcut almost every day for the 2 years I worked there, until last November. Until everything changed, until he showed up. It was November 12th, a freezing Friday morning. The air was sharp enough to hurt, and my breath came out pale and shaky. I remember thinking I should have worn my thicker jacket, but I was half asleep and couldn't find it in the dark. I started down the usual sidewalk, music low in my ears. I always kept one earbud out. Habit, ever since Mom used to tell me never to walk completely tuned out. When I reached the chain-link gap behind the old tennis courts, I ducked inside and stepped into the wooded path. The ground was covered with frost, and the only sounds were my boots crunching and the faint hum of traffic far away. Except something felt off. These woods were never totally quiet. I always heard something. Squirrels, birds, wind rustling. But that morning was dead still. No movement, no sound. I slowed down. My body reacted before my brain did. My shoulders tensed. My breath shortened. You know that feeling when your instincts grab you by the throat? That's what it felt like. I stopped walking. The silence deepened. I removed my second earbud and turned around. Nothing. Just the empty path, the outline of trees, and the distant glow of streetlights behind me. "Okay, Alyssa," I whispered to myself. "You're tired, you're cold, you're freaking yourself out." I started walking again. That's when I heard it footsteps. Behind me. Slow, deliberate. I froze. The footsteps stopped too. I swallowed hard and turned my head slightly. My breath came out shaky. No one was there. I tried to tell myself it was ice cracking or an animal. But I'd heard enough footsteps in my life to know the difference. This wasn't random noise, this was a person matching my pace. "Hey, who's there?" I called out. No answer. I took a step. The footsteps followed. My pulse spiked. I started walking faster, gripping my phone so tightly my fingers hurt. I thought about calling someone, anyone, but it was too early, no one would be awake. When I reached the halfway point, the old wooden city maintenance bench, I let out a breath of relief. The end of the woods was just around the bend. I could see the faint orange glow of the Dunkin sign from far away. But then I noticed something. A man, standing on the path behind me, not moving, not blinking, just watching. He was maybe 40, tall, thin, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans. At first, I thought maybe he was just another morning walker, but something about him felt wrong. His posture, his stillness. He didn't act like he had somewhere to be. He acted like he'd been waiting. Morning," I said, my voice cracking. He didn't answer. He didn't smile. He didn't acknowledge me. He just lifted his head slightly, as if studying me. I turned back around quickly and walked fast. My heartbeat hammered in my ears. The Dunkin sign was getting closer. Just a minute more, I told myself. Then footsteps, running. He was rushing toward me. I didn't think. I sprinted, full speed. But before I reached the exit of the woods, something yanked the back of my hood so hard I stumbled, I spun around. The man stood inches away from me. His eyes were wild, unblinking, cold, focused. "Don't touch me," I yelled. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at me like he was trying to memorize my face. I pulled away and ran. I didn't stop until I burst out of the woods, stumbled onto the pavement, and nearly slipped on the frost. By the time I reached the back door of Dunkin, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the handle. I didn't tell my manager. I didn't call the police. I was embarrassed, terrified, and unsure if anyone would even care. He didn't actually hurt me, right? Right? But deep down, something felt violated. Like he'd taken something from me the moment his hand touched my hood. Something I didn't have a name for. I didn't walk through the woods again. Not even once. I took the longer, safer route every morning. It added 12 minutes to my walk, but I didn't care. I felt safer, more visible. But something strange happened. I started seeing him. Not close. Not enough to confront, but enough to know it wasn't a coincidence. At 4:50 a.m., he'd be standing at the far end of Harper Avenue the next day. He was near the bus stop. Another day by the convenience store across from Dunkin. Always far away, always watching, never approaching. I tried telling myself I was imagining it, but when I told my coworker Tanner, his reaction scared me more than the man did. "You've seen him too?" Tanner whispered. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" Tanner leaned against the counter, eyes uneasy. Jessica, the girl who worked the opening shift before you? She quit, said someone was following her. A man, tall, wore a gray hoodie most days. Chills washed over me. What happened to her? He shrugged. She left Riverview, just packed up and went to Indiana. My throat tightened. Did she say what he did? No, not really. Only that he'd wait in the woods. And sometimes he, followed her all the way here. A sickening dread crawled through me. What about the police? They said he wasn't doing anything illegal. My hands trembled. What if it's the same guy? I whispered. Tanner didn't answer. He didn't have to. It got worse, far worse. The first note showed up on Monday, stuffed under my apartment door. Just 4 words. I like your routine. My blood ran cold. The next day, you shouldn't have stopped walking through the woods. Wednesday, you run slower than I expected. My chest tightened. I felt nauseous. He knew where I lived. He knew my schedule. He knew how fast I ran. He knew I had changed my route. I filed a police report. They said they'd keep an eye on the area. But without explicit threats, there wasn't much they could do. I started staying at my friend Olivia's place twice a week. But on the nights I did stay home, I barely slept. Every time the floor creaked, every time a car drove by, every time the heater clicked on, thought he was inside. A month passed. I kept working. I kept taking the long route. Nothing happened. I started to think maybe he'd moved on. I was wrong. On December 19th, we were short-staffed, so I took an overnight cleaning shift, just me and the hum of the refrigerators. At 2:17 a.m., I took the trash out behind the store. It was snowing lightly. The alley was empty, except for the dumpsters and tire tracks from deliveries earlier that night. The Dunkin neon sign flickered pink and orange against the wet pavement. I dumped the trash, turned around, stopped breathing. He was standing across the lot, closer than he'd ever been since the woods. My heart stopped. He stepped forward, then another step, then another. I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry. Finally, I managed, "What do you want from me?" He tilted his head like the question confused him. "Why are you doing this?" I yelled. He stared expressionless. Then for the first time he spoke. 4 words, soft, flat, almost curious. "Because you noticed me." My stomach dropped like a stone. Before I could react, he lunged. I didn't think. I didn't scream. I ran. I burst through the back door and slammed it shut. My breathing was ragged, my vision blurry. He pounded once on the metal door. Slow, hard, boom. Then silence. I backed away, shaking. I stayed inside until morning. I didn't go near the windows. I didn't move from the staff room couch. December 22nd, my last shift before Christmas weekend. I told myself I wouldn't be alone. Tanner and Olivia were going to meet me after work to walk me home. It was still dark when I stepped out back at 6:05 a.m. to toss cardboard boxes. The alley was quiet, too quiet. I hesitated. Something caught my eye, a footprint, in the thin layer of snow. Then another, and another, leading toward the woods behind the store. My stomach twisted. A voice behind me whispered, "Why'd you stop taking the shortcut, Alyssa?" I spun around. He was standing 6 feet away, gray hoodie, cold eyes, a smile that didn't reach them. "Stay away from me," I choked out. He took a step closer. "You walk past me for months," he said softly, "and you never look at me. Not once. Then you did. That morning, and I knew you finally saw me. I'm calling the police." "No," he said calmly. "You won't." He moved faster than I expected, grabbing my wrist, twisting it, pulling me toward the tree line. I screamed, kicked, clawed. "Let go! Help! Somebody!" He covered my mouth with his hand. "Shh! No one's here yet." The woods loomed behind the store, dark and frozen. He dragged me toward the path. I stumbled, trying to dig my heels into the snow. "Stop! Please! Let me go!" "That's what she said too," he murmured. "She, Jessica." My blood ran cold. Everything became a blur of panic, fear, and adrenaline. Then, a voice. "Hey, let her go!" Tanner, running toward us with a metal broom handle in his hands. The man startled. His grip loosened for a split second. Just enough. I yanked myself away and sprinted back toward the parking lot. Behind me, I heard grunts, the sound of a struggle. Tanner shouting. I didn't turn around. I ran into the store and locked the door. I called 911. When the police arrived, they found Tanner bruised but alive, and the man gone, just gone. Vanished into the woods. No footsteps, no tracks, nothing. The police took my statement. They promised to patrol the area. They told me to consider relocating 2 weeks later. I did. I moved to a different city, Springfield, Illinois, and found a new job. I don't walk to work anymore. I take ride shares or the bus, but sometimes late at night, when I'm closing up the new store, I feel it. A presence, a pair of eyes, a man standing just far enough away that I can't tell if he's real or a shadow. I convince myself it's only anxiety. But deep down, I know the truth. He didn't follow me because I stopped walking through the woods. He followed me because I finally noticed him, and people like him don't like to be forgotten. Story 4. I never thought my life would amount to more than quiet routines and silent compromises. Before everything happened, before the night I realized monsters don't lurk in shadows, they stand right under fluorescent lights, I lived a life so ordinary it was almost invisible. My name is Evan Rourke. I'm 25 now, but this all began 9 months ago, when I was still 24 and barely holding myself together in Briar Oaks, Missouri, a place small enough to feel safe, but broken enough to hide the kinds of secrets nobody talks about unless they're drunk or dying. After my dad overdosed on pain meds and my sister moved to Ohio with her boyfriend, I ended up crashing at my aunt's small 2-bedroom house on Alder Street. Aunt Meredith was one of those women who always smelled faintly like lemons and laundry. She didn't ask for money. She didn't pry. She simply said, "Stay as long as you need until you figure life out." I thought I'd only need a month. I was wrong. Bills pile up even when your heart's broken, so I took the first job that didn't involve lifting 50-pound boxes or pretending to be happy in front of people. Night shift at Dunkin Donuts, off exit 42, right before the interstate splits toward St. Clair. Midnight to 8 a.m. The pay sucked, but the nights were quiet, and I liked that quiet. Felt safe, predictable. Most nights it was just me, a humming ice machine, the distant sound of trucks passing on the freeway, and the warm smell of coffee that clung to everything. Including me, I'd ride home every morning with my clothes smelling like hazelnut and caramel swirl. The regulars were always the same. Cal, the tow truck driver who swore he'd win the lottery one day. Nurse Hallie, exhausted, sweet, always ordering hot chocolate even in summer. Mr. Larkin, retired cop who looked like he still saw ghosts from old cases. And a handful of truckers whose names I never caught, but whose orders I memorized. Nothing supernatural, nothing dramatic, just loneliness and caffeine, until the first night she appeared. The woman I should have ignored. It was 3:17 a.m. A slow night. I remember the time because I'd just switched the in-store radio from some local talk show to old 80s hits to stay awake. I was wiping down the front counter when I felt it. That sudden shift in the air, like the temperature dropped by 10 degrees. I looked toward the window facing the parking lot. At first I thought it was a trick of the reflection, but she was real. A woman, tall, thin, pale enough to look almost colorless, stood under the flickering street lamp at the edge of the lot. Her hair was long, dark, tangled like she'd been caught in wind that didn't exist. She didn't move, not even a sway, just stared straight toward the window, at me. I stepped closer. Her face wasn't angry, wasn't sad. It was just blank, like she was waiting for something she knew I'd eventually give. When a car pulled in, I turned for a second. When I looked back, she was gone. Probably nothing, I muttered. Probably tired. That was the first lie I told myself, not the last. The stray. 2 nights later, something else happened. I was cleaning the back counter when I heard scratching near the rear delivery door. Thought maybe it was raccoons again, but when I opened the door, a tiny dirt-covered kitten slipped inside snow-white fur, except for the mud crusted along its sides. Blue eyes, a small, trembling thing. "Hey, little dude," I whispered, kneeling down. It didn't hiss, didn't run. It just looked relieved. I grabbed one of the small milk cartons from the cooler, and poured some into a cup. It drank like it hadn't eaten in days, and when it finished, it walked over to my shoes, curled up right on top of them, and fell asleep. I should have taken it outside, but I didn't. By the end of my shift, it was curled up in my hoodie. I brought it home. Aunt Meredith woke up early that morning. When she saw the kitten, she frowned. "Evan, where did you get that?" "It was outside the shop, freezing. Look at it, it's harmless." She stared longer than she should have. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. "It isn't harmless." Her voice was uncharacteristically firm. "Cats aren't harmless, not when they show up out of nowhere." I laughed it off. "It's a cat, Aunt Mere, not a demon." She didn't laugh. "What are you going to name it?" she asked eventually. The kitten blinked at me. "Frost," I said. "He looks like a snowball someone dropped." Frost meowed softly, and something about that sound made my chest ache in a good way, like I wasn't entirely alone anymore. If only I knew. Signs I shouldn't have ignored. The woman returned, 3 nights in a row, always around 3 a.m., always standing in a different part of the lot, always staring, not blinking, not moving, just watching. One night I mentioned her to Vic, the shift manager who left at midnight. He smirked. "Night shift'll do that to you. You're seeing shadows. Lack of REM sleep messes with your head, kid." I wanted to believe him, but shadows don't leave footprints. That morning when I stepped outside to toss the trash, I saw them. Bare footprints leading away from the lot straight into the row of pine trees behind the store Bear, in 34-degree weather. No one walks barefoot in that cold. No one human anyway. I swallowed hard and backed inside. Aunt Meredith gets strange. At home, things shifted too. Frost took to me instantly, always following me, curling on my pillow, sleeping by my feet. But Aunt Meredith, she avoided him, avoided the living room if Frost was in it. "It watches me," she said once. "It's a cat," I replied again. "No, it's not." She'd never been paranoid before, never dramatic, never fearful, but suddenly she checked locks twice, slept with the TV on, kept her bedroom door closed. Something was wrong, with her, with the house, with me. I just didn't know what. The night everything broke. It was a Tuesday morning when it happened. I came home at 8:10 a.m., Frost asleep in my backpack, purring softly against my notebooks. Aunt Meredith's car was still in the driveway. Weird, she always left at 7:45 to avoid traffic. Inside, the house was silent, too silent. "Meredith?" I called. Nothing. Kitchen empty, living room untouched, coffee machine cold. She never left the coffee machine cold. I walked to her bedroom. The door was closed. She hated closed doors, always said they choked the air. I knocked. "Hey, you okay?" No answer. I twisted the handle. Locked. A cold dread settled in my stomach. I pressed my ear to the wood. Nothing. No movement. No breathing. Just stillness. I backed up and rammed my shoulder into the door. Once. Twice. On the third try, it flew open. The smell hit me instantly. Heavy, musty, like wet earth trapped in a basement. Aunt Meredith lay in bed. Eyes wide open, body stiff. Mouth parted like she'd been caught mid-scream but never finished. "Meredith!" I shouted, gripping her shoulders. She didn't blink, didn't speak. She was breathing, but shallow, robotic, wrong. At the foot of her bed sat Frost, watching, silent, unmoving. I called 911. Paramedics arrived fast the moment they touched her. She gasped, like something snapped inside her chest and let her breathe again. She sat up violently, coughing, eyes darting around. What happened?" she whispered. "We were hoping you could tell us," one medic said. But she couldn't. She remembered nothing. Just a pressure. "Something heavy was on me," she whispered to me, like someone sitting on my ribs. Her hands shook for hours. Not my aunt. 2 nights later, I finally had a day off. We made dinner. We tried to watch a movie. Tried to pretend everything was normal. At midnight, she said she was tired and went to bed. I tried to sleep too, but something felt wrong in the house. At 3:04 a.m., I woke up abruptly. Someone was lying beside me. I turned. My breath froze in my chest. It was Aunt Meredith. But she wasn't right. Her face was too still. Her eyes were too open. Her smile too thin. "Aunt Mir," I whispered. She blinked slowly. "I wanted to be close to you," she murmured. Her voice was flat, emotionless, unfamiliar. "What are you doing in here?" I asked, sitting up fast. She tilted her head. "You're kind, Evan." "Okay, stop. Stop talking like that. What's going on?" Her smile widened unnaturally. "I'm not Meredith." Cold shot through my spine. "What?" I whispered. "You let me inside," she said calmly. "You gave me warmth, shelter, a place to rest." Her eyes flickered, blue for a second, then back. Frost's eyes. My throat tightened. "This isn't funny," I snapped, backing toward the door. Her voice deepened. "I was starving, weak. You fed the body I used to slip through." My hand shook on the door. "Stop. I am not her," she whispered. "And soon, you won't be you either." I tried to run, but she raised her hand, and every muscle in my body froze. I collapsed, paralyzed, unable to blink. She leaned close. "Sleep now," she whispered. "I need time." And everything went black. Gone. I woke up in my bed, sunlight through the curtains, sweat on my skin. But the house, silent, too silent. I ran to Aunt Meredith's room, empty, her bed made, her closet open, her purse untouched. No note, no keys, no Frost. I called the police and filed a missing person report. They asked if she was depressed, on medication, having memory issues. I lied about the paralysis, lied about I'm not Meredith, lied about everything. Who would believe me? A week passed, nothing. No sightings, no calls, no credit card use. She vanished like she'd never existed. The investigator. I hired a private investigator named Lydia Cross, a former detective with sharp eyes and no patience for bullshit. After 6 days of digging, she called me. "Evan," she said, voice tight, "you need to see something." She pulled up security footage from the camera above our front porch timestamp, 2:57 a.m., the night everything happened. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Aunt Meredith, or something wearing her shape, walked out the front door barefoot, holding Frost. She stopped, looked up directly into the camera, smiled, then walked off toward the woods behind the property. Neither of them appeared again in any footage. Lydia exhaled sharply. "She walked into the trees barefoot in 20-degree weather," she said. "No way she survived." I nodded numbly. "Unless," Lydia added slowly, "that wasn't her." I didn't sleep for days. Unfinished. It's been 9 months I moved to a new town, new job, new life. I don't work night shifts anymore, but sometimes I stay up late without meaning to. And on nights when I'm awake at 3 a.m., I swear, I see her or it, a pale shape just outside the window, standing near the tree line, watching, waiting. Sometimes I hear soft scratching under the house, soft mewing, soft breathing. Sometimes a shadow moves across the yard, too silent to be human. Sometimes I dream of blue eyes glowing in the dark. Sometimes I wake up to find dirt on my windowsill, and every night, deep down, I wonder, did I bring it home? Did I feed it? Did I invite it in? Or worse, is it still hungry? Story 5. I was 10 years old the year my life stopped feeling simple. Back then, fear meant things like thunder, or the basement light flickering off when you were still halfway down the stairs, or the shadows cast by the half-shut hallway door. Not people, not real danger. Definitely not the kind of thing that keeps you awake 20 years later, staring at the cracks in your ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering if someone is outside your house right now. My name is Evan Rourke, and the year everything changed, my family had just moved into a tiny rental house in Grayford, Pennsylvania, a small, cold town where winter felt like an unwelcome guest that refused to leave. The houses were close, separated by fences that leaned from years of wind pressure. Everyone had seasonal decorations, plastic ghosts, faded scarecrows, hay bales that always looked like they had already survived 2 Halloween seasons. My parents said it was safer than the city. They were wrong in the way people can only be when they trust the world too much. My mom, Laura, had recently started a job at the Dunkin Donuts on Hawthorne Road, a small 24-hour shop tucked between a laundromat and an auto repair garage. She took the evening shifts 3 times a week. My dad, Chris, worked construction, long hours, sometimes overnight on new highway development. So for a lot of nights, it was just me, mom, and my little sister Claire, who was 7, tiny, soft-spoken, and scared of almost everything. That year, Halloween fell on a Wednesday. 3 days before that, Sunday evening, we'd carved our pumpkins. It was tradition, not like a fun tradition, more like something we did to keep some normalcy between moves. My dad called it holiday stability. I think it was just guilt because we moved so much for his work. We all sat at the dining table in our cramped little house. The carving knives were old, rusty, and probably dangerous. But they were all we had. Mom insisted we use trash bags on the table this year so the seeds didn't get stuck in the cracks again. I carved mine into a classic triangle-eyes, wide-mouthed jack-o'-lantern, sharp, large teeth. Something dramatic. Claire made hers goofy, one big uneven eye, the other a circle that nearly collapsed the wall of the pumpkin, and a crooked smile. She stuck one of the pumpkin seeds on the top to act like a mole. "It looks like it's confused," I told her. She grinned. "He's supposed to be confused. His name is Mr. Wiggle." "Why Wiggle?" "Because he wiggles." She squirmed her shoulders for demonstration. Mom laughed from the sink. "Don't tease your sister. Evan, hers is cute." "No, it's—" I started, then stopped. "Yeah, okay, it's cute." When we finished, it was around 8:45 p.m. Mom told us to put the pumpkins outside before getting ready for bed. We carried them to the front porch, the night cold enough that our breath fogged in front of us. The street was mostly dark except for the occasional flicker of a street lamp. Our porch light buzzed but stayed steady. And then I saw him. A man stood across the street just beyond the edge of the streetlight. He wasn't tall. His posture looked bent, shoulders slightly curved inward. He wore a heavy brown jacket, dark jeans, and a gray beanie pulled low. In his hands, he held something small, maybe a cup of Dunkin paper cup. Claire didn't notice him at first. She bent down to place her pumpkin gently on the step. I froze, staring. The man wasn't moving, not walking, not shifting his weight, just standing. But the moment he realized I was looking at him, he tilted his head, only a little, as if confused by the fact I noticed him. Then he turned, not toward the sidewalk, like someone who decided to go home, but toward our house. "Claire," I whispered. She turned her head, spotted him, and dropped her pumpkin. It thudded but didn't break. "Mom!" she shrieked, scrambling backward. The man jerked in a sudden, unnatural movement and ran. Not away. Toward the side of our house, I grabbed Claire's arm and dragged her inside, slamming the door. Mom came running toward us. "What happened?" There's someone outside," I gasped. "A man," Claire added, her voice shaking. "He ran around the house." Mom's face drained instantly. She called Dad up from the basement, and he rushed outside with a flashlight, circling the whole house twice. 10 minutes later, he returned, irritated. "Nothing. Not a single person out there. You kids probably scared a jogger or a neighbor." But Mom didn't believe that. She kept glancing at the windows the rest of the night. We placed the pumpkins outside again. Mine on the left, Claire's on the right. Mr. Wiggle wiggled in the cold breeze that night. I barely slept. I kept imagining the man behind the fence, behind the hedges, behind the dark glass of my window, watching. The next morning, Mom was on the phone. Her voice was sharp but controlled, her scared but pretending she's not voice. Dad stood near her, coffee in hand. "What happened?" I asked quietly. Dad rubbed his jaw. "Back window's broken. Someone threw something at it. Louise next door heard it around 2 in the morning." I swallowed. "Did they go inside?" "The basement door was kicked, hard." He paused, then added, "Nothing's missing." Then I asked the question I dreaded. "What about the pumpkins?" He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I walked toward the window and peeked outside. Both pumpkins were destroyed, not smashed like they fell, shredded, pulverized, ground into the cement like someone repeatedly stomped them for minutes. The police arrived an hour later. 2 officers, tired-looking, casual. They took notes, shrugged at the pumpkins, and said, Kids messing around, teens get stupid before Halloween. Mom argued, but the officer simply advised, keep your doors locked, motion lights wouldn't hurt. And that was that. But I never forgot what he looked like, the man under the street lamp. And I especially never forgot the cup in his hand. Nothing happened for 7 days. Mom drove home tense, always checking her mirrors. She started carrying pepper spray. Dad kept a hammer by the bed. Claire wouldn't even look at the porch. I thought maybe, the fear would wear off. Maybe it was just some stranger passing through, nothing more. Then Tuesday night came. Dad was upstairs helping Claire with reading homework. Mom was working closing shift at Dunkin, scheduled to return around 10 p.m. I was in my room drawing. At 9:32 p.m., the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I called. Dad shouted down, "Look through the peephole first." But I didn't. I wish I had. When I opened the door, there was no one there, just the wind and the yellow porch light illuminating a single object on the welcome mat, a pumpkin. Perfectly round, small, bright orange, untouched, no stem, just sitting where Mr. Wiggle used to be. My stomach sank. Then I noticed something else. A folded piece of Dunkin napkin was taped to the doorframe, held there with a piece of clear tape. I slowly peeled it off, the napkin soft and crinkly. Words were written in red ink, shaky, uneven letters. He didn't wiggle tonight, so he made no sound. I screamed so loud everything inside me echoed. Dad came running. "What? Evan, what happened?" I shoved the napkin into his hand, shaking violently. He stared at it, face tightening. Then he grabbed Claire from the stairwell, pulling her away from the windows. He locked the front door. He locked the back. He checked every corner of the house. "Call the police," I cried. "We are," Dad said, but his voice broke when he said it. The police came again, this time 3 officers. They took the pumpkin. They took the note. They inspected the house. One talked to Mom's manager over the phone, but no answers came. Only a question that has haunted me since that night. How did he know about Mr. Wiggle? Claire had only said the name once, whispered, soft, just between us. And how did he get that Dunkin napkin? Mom cried quietly in her room that night, thinking none of us could hear. Dad stayed awake with the hammer. Claire slept in Mom's arms, whimpering even in her dreams. I didn't sleep at all. Within 2 months, we left Grayford. New house, new town, new school, new everything. We didn't take the pumpkins. We didn't take the memories. But the fear came with us. Claire stopped carving pumpkins entirely. Even now, as an adult, she refuses to decorate for Halloween. Dad never said it aloud, but that night changed him. He became the kind of man who double-checks locks 3 times Mom left Dunkin. She still can't smell powdered sugar without tensing. And I became the kind of person who watches shadows too long. Now I'm 30, I live alone in a small 2-bedroom rental in Warrenton, Virginia. I'm a middle school art teacher. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I'm normal, I think. But every October, the memories crawl back. Every October, I keep my porch brightly lit. Every October, I sit outside after work, drinking tea on the steps. And every October, I avoid pumpkins. Not because I'm scared of them, but because I'm waiting. Waiting for the thing I fear most. The thing I've dreamed of for 2 decades. The thing I knew, deep down, would happen someday. 3 days before Halloween, after getting home late from grading papers, I walked onto my porch to bring in a chair before the rain started, and I froze. Sitting on the porch map, right where Mr. Wiggle once sat, was a pumpkin. Round, perfect, no stem. My legs went numb. "No," I whispered, "no, not after all these years." But the pumpkin wasn't what made my throat tighten. What made my heart stop was the object leaning against it. A Dunkin paper cup, half crushed. Old logo, one they stopped using in the early 2000s. And taped to the cup, a napkin, Dunkin napkin, crinkled. Yellowed with age, I didn't want to read it, but my hands moved on their own. The writing was familiar, shaky, red ink. He never learned to wiggle, but you did. You hid so well. I'm proud. See you soon. I dropped the napkin as if it burned. I staggered backward, hand gripping the railing, breath refusing to come out. Someone was watching me. I could feel it. Someone was close. Someone who had waited 20 years. Someone who wasn't done. I reached for my phone with trembling fingers and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Before I could speak, the porch light blinked. Once. Twice. Then shut off. The street went black. In that suffocating darkness, I heard it, a soft, wet sound. A footstep right behind me. I ran inside, slammed the door, locked it, then shoved a chair under the knob. Police arrived. They searched everything, found nothing. But I knew. He was there. He is here. He found me again. It's Halloween night as I'm writing this. The police suggested I stay somewhere else, but I can't. Running didn't save us last time. The porch is fully lit again. Every curtain open, every door locked. No pumpkins, no decorations, just me staring at the street, waiting for him, and he will come. I know he will. People like him don't forget. People like him don't stop. And when he shows up, this time I won't run. This time I won't be a scared kid hiding behind a door. This time I want to see his face to understand why he chose us. Why he chose Claire. Why he waited 20 years. It's 11:58 p.m., almost midnight. I can hear something on the steps, slow, crunching, steady. I'm stepping outside now, just to look, just once. The air is cold, the street is empty, and yet, there's something on the mat. A Dunkin napkin. My hands are shaking as I unfold it. Just 4 words. 4 words that make my blood freeze. Turn around. Don't wiggle. The porch light flickers. Someone breathes behind me. I turn, and everything goes black. Story 6, I never planned on working at a place like Dunkin Donuts. At 31 years old, I thought I'd have my life figured out. Maybe be somewhere better than a strip mall coffee shop with flickering fluorescent lights and a fryer that hissed like it was always on the verge of exploding. But life doesn't follow our timelines. Mine sure didn't. My name is Aaron Whitlock, and before everything happened, I lived in Greendale, Washington, a small suburb outside Tacoma. Not the beautiful, evergreen, postcard-perfect kind. More of a tired town with graying parking lots, too many payday loan stores, and a quiet bitterness in the air. I grew up here, moved away for a few years, then came crawling back after my marriage fell apart and my finances got crushed under medical bills from my mother's cancer treatments. After she passed, I stayed. Not because I loved the town, but because leaving felt like another thing to fail at. And Dunkin Donuts, well, it wasn't my dream job, but it was open, it was hiring, and it paid just enough to keep the lights on in my tiny 1-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. I'd been working there for just over 4 months when everything began, on a Thursday morning that should have been like any other. My shift began at 5 a.m. sharp. I dragged myself out of bed at 4:12, washed my face with water as cold as the air outside, and pulled on my uniform. Dark brown polo, black apron, hat that never quite fit my head. By 4:47, I was driving down Pine Street, passing shuttered storefronts glowing under the pale early morning streetlights. Greendale wasn't awake yet, only the occasional semi-truck rumbled through. I parked behind Dunkin Donuts, swiped my key card at the back door, and pushed inside. The smell always hit me first. Warm sugar, yeast, frying oil. Comforting, sure, but also strangely heavy at this hour, like it clung to you. Inside, Shauna, my coworker, was at the sink washing trays. "You're early," she said, not looking up. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. "Again?" "Again." She shut off the faucet, dried her hands on her apron, and gave me a look that wasn't quite pity, but close. I never told her everything, about the crushing insomnia, the nightmares that never fully left, the way my mom used to whisper my name when she was delirious in the hospital. But Shauna was sharp. She picked up things. "You making the glaze today?" she asked. "I can." "Good, my wrist is killing me." She lifted her arm and winced. "Carpal tunnel. I swear this job is going to take my hands before it gives me health insurance." I cracked a smile. "Add it to the list of things this place takes from us." She didn't disagree. By 5:33, the donuts were proofed, the coffee was brewing, and the open sign buzzed to life. Our first customer usually didn't arrive until 6 o'clock, sometimes 6:15, but at 5:41, the bell over the front door chimed. Shauna and I froze. "No one comes this early," she whispered. I wiped my hands on my apron and stepped toward the counter. The man who walked in looked ordinary, but something felt off immediately. He wore a gray windbreaker, wrinkled slacks, and scuffed dress shoes. His hairline receded sharply, his face lined with age or exhaustion. I couldn't tell which. He wasn't old exactly, maybe late 40s, early 50s, but it was his smile that unsettled me. Too wide, too slow, like he had to remember how to make the expression. "Morning," I said. He didn't respond. He walked toward the display case with mechanical movements, as if each step were a deliberate choice. "Sir, can I help you?" He stopped, tilted his head. Not a normal tilt, more like a bird examining something. Then he spoke, his voice rough but calm. "Do you still make the maple crullers?" "Yes," I said. "We have fresh ones." He nodded once, like he'd been waiting for that answer. Then he whispered, "Good." Shauna leaned over to me and murmured, "He creeps me the hell out." But the man didn't order not right away. He stood there staring at the donuts in the case like he was trying to remember something important. Finally, he lifted a finger and pointed at the tray. "I'll take that one." "Which one?" I asked gently. "The one that's smiling." I blinked. "Sir, donuts, don't—" "That one," he repeated sharply, tapping the glass. "The one that's smiling at me." His eyes never left the tray. And the worst part, the donut he was pointing at, one of the maple crullers, did somehow look like it had a tiny groove near the edge that resembled a faint grin. Coincidence, sure, but in that moment, it didn't feel like one. I boxed the donut, handed it to him, and he paid in cash, exact change. Not a second too long, not a coin too few. He walked out without another word. When the bell jingled behind him, Shauna exhaled hard. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. "I don't know." But inside, something twisted tight in my stomach, because I knew I'd seen that face before, somewhere. He came again the next morning, same time. 5:41 a.m., same expression, same stiff posture, same unsettling smile. "Do you still make the maple crullers?" he asked again. I cleared my throat. "Yes, fresh ones." "Good." He ordered the same one, the same donut from the same tray. But these were new donuts, freshly made. They weren't the same shape, weren't arranged the same way. And yet, he pointed to the exact spot in the tray, that same faint smiling pattern. Shauna pressed her nails into my arm when he wasn't looking. "Aaron, he wasn't normal yesterday, and he's not normal today." "I know," I whispered. He left again, silent and stiff, exact change in hand. This time I watched him walk to his car, a faded blue sedan that looked like it belonged in a junkyard, and drive away. "Do we report that?" Shauna asked. "To who?" "I don't know. Someone." "We can't call the cops because a guy buys donuts weird." "No," she said quietly, "because he doesn't blink." I swallowed. Neither had I noticed him blink. Not once. On Sunday night, I got a call from Shauna. Her voice trembled. "Aaron, can you come to the shop?" "What? Why?" "It's important, please." I arrived in 10 minutes, parking crooked in my rush. Shauna stood outside the shop, arms wrapped around herself, pale under the yellow security light. She handed me her phone. "Watch." The video was grainy, security cam footage from earlier that evening. At 8:03 p.m., long after we closed, the front door of Maple Crest Donuts opened on its own. No one pushed it. No one was outside. Just the door swinging, slow, creaking, deliberate. Then, a figure entered. The man, the same man. He walked behind the counter without hesitation, as if he worked there. Opened the display case. Pulled out a maple cruller. Not the one that was smiling. This one had no pattern, no mark. Nothing unusual. He held it up to the camera and smiled. A wide, unnatural, stretched smile. Then the footage glitched, blacked out for 3 seconds. When it came back, the man was gone. I lowered the phone slowly. "Shauna, Do the doors auto-lock at close? They're supposed to. And the cameras? Hardwired. They shouldn't glitch. My throat tightened. Someone has keys, or he forced the door. No, she said firmly. There was no forcing. And I checked the back door. It was locked. How did he get in? She shook her head. I don't know, but Aaron, he didn't walk up. He just appeared at the edge of the frame when the door opened. I looked at her. You think it's a ghost? No, she whispered. I think it's something worse. The next morning I opened alone. Shauna called out sick. Too sick with fear to come in, I didn't blame her. The silence in the shop was heavy, thicker than usual, like the air was waiting for something. And at 5:41 a.m., the door opened. My blood ran cold. He stepped inside. Same windbreaker, same shoes, same expression. But today his face was different. Not visibly, not physically, just wrong. Aaron, he said. My heart stopped. How do you know my name? He smiled slowly. You helped me the first day. You gave me the donut shaped like a smile. That doesn't explain. You don't understand yet. Understand what? That it was never about the donut. Then he reached into his pocket. I flinched, but he pulled out a folded piece of paper. He placed it on the counter. You need to leave, he said quietly. Leave what? This place, this town, today. If you stay, you won't survive. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. It was a photograph, grainy, old. A woman I didn't recognize standing beside my mother, my dead mother, and behind them, in the shadows, the man, his face, younger, but unmistakably him. My voice cracked. Who are you? He leaned close and whispered, I've been following your family for a long time. I stumbled back, nearly knocking over a rack of cups. This is some kind of joke. Who sent you? No one sent me. Then what do you want? His voice softened. There's something hunting this town, something older than Maple Crest, older than your family, and I came to warn you. Why me? He didn't blink. It chooses people with empty spaces in their lives, people grieving, people alone. A chill ran through me. I hadn't told anyone about the nightmares, not Shauna, not friends, not even my brother. How do you know that? But he didn't answer. Instead, he lifted his sleeve, revealing burn scars, long, jagged marks running up his arm like something had clawed him. He whispered, It marked me first years ago, when I tried to stop it. What is it? He shook his head. You'll know soon enough, but you need to trust me. Why should I? He leaned closer. Because 3 nights from now, at 5:41 a.m., something is coming for you. I backed away. This is insane. I'm calling the police. His eyes softened. They won't see it. They never do. Get out, I hissed. Now! He nodded once, but before he walked away, he said, Aaron, I'm sorry, I truly am, but you need to understand, your mother wasn't supposed to die when she did. My breath stopped. I felt punched in the chest. What did you say? She wasn't taken by illness. Not really. Get out. He stepped back, lifted his hands and left the shop. The bell chimed once, and then he was gone. For the next 2 days, I barely slept. I tried. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face. Sunken, weak, whispering things in the hospital I couldn't fully hear. I remembered the last thing she ever said to me. Aaron, don't let it follow you. Back then, I thought she meant her illness, or her debt, or her sadness. Now, I wasn't sure. Shauna noticed my condition when she came back 2 days later. Aaron, you look sick. I'm fine. You're not. You look like someone who's waiting to die. I didn't respond. She placed a hand on mine. Talk to me. But I couldn't tell her. Not yet, because part of me believed none of this was real, that the man was just disturbed, that the photograph was doctored, that everything was a coincidence, until the night before the 3rd day, the night he said the thing would come. I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling. The clock read 2:11 a.m. Wind rattled my window. Then, I heard it, a faint whisper. right beside my ear. Aaron! I shot upright, heart pounding. No one was there, but in the corner of my room, someone was standing. Tall, thin, wrong. Its silhouette bent at angles no human body could make. I scrambled back, knocking over a lamp. The figure stepped closer, skin the color of ash, limbs too long, a face with no features except a stretched, faintly smiling mouth. The same smile as the donut, the same smile the man had feared, the same smile I saw in my nightmares. I opened my mouth to scream. But it vanished, just gone, like it was never there. I didn't sleep again. I arrived at Maple Crest Donuts at 4:58 a.m., heart pounding, hands shaking. I stood behind the counter and stared at the door. 5:10, 5:20, 5:30, 5:40. My chest tightened. 5:41 a.m. The bell over the door didn't chime, but the front door slowly opened anyway. Cold air swept in. The lights flickered, and something stepped inside. Not the man, not human. It crawled on elongated limbs, head tilting in unnatural angles, bone protruding beneath thin gray skin, its mouth stretched in a grotesque crescent. A smile, the same smile. I stumbled backward. Stay! Stay back! It moved faster. I grabbed a metal tray and swung with all my strength. It shattered into the creature's jaw. But the jaw unhinged, stretching wider. Too wide, inhumanly wide. I screamed. It lunged, and then a voice behind me shouted, "Down!" I dropped instinctively. A shotgun blast thundered through the shop. The creature reeled backward, shrieking. The man, the same man, stood in the doorway, pumping the shotgun again. "Aaron, move!" I scrambled to my feet. He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the back door. "That won't hold it long," he said urgently. "We need to run." "What is that thing?" I cried. "The thing that killed your mother." Cold rushed through me. "That thing? Yes. And now it wants you." We stumbled into the alley behind the shop, but the creature burst through the front window, glass exploding outward. It crawled across the pavement, screeching. "It won't stop," the man hissed. "Not until you're dead." "Why?" "Because you're the last name on its list." "My list?" He grabbed my face, forcing me to look into his eyes. "It targeted your family decades ago, one by one, and now you're the last one alive." I staggered. No, that doesn't make sense." He pulled a photograph from his pocket. My mother, my father, my brother, me. Circles drawn around each. 3 circled in red, 1 circled in black. Mine. "I tried to warn your mother," he said, "but it got to her before I could." Tears blurred my vision. "Why help me now?" His voice broke. "Because once, a long time ago, your mother helped me." Before I could respond, the creature lunged. He shoved me aside. And the creature collided with him instead. He screamed as it tore into him. Blood splattered across the pavement. "No!" I yelled. "No, no, no!" "Aaron, run!" he choked. I did. I sprinted down the alley, lungs burning, heart hammering. The creature shrieked behind me. I burst onto Pine Street, dodging cars, stumbling toward the only place I could think to go. The bridge out of Greendale. If I could cross it, if I could get out, maybe it couldn't follow beyond the town. But halfway across, I heard it, right behind me. I turned, it was inches away, mouth stretched, eyes hollow, hands reaching. I screamed and jumped, off the bridge, into the freezing river. Into the dark, I woke up in a hospital bed 2 days later. Shauna sat beside me, eyes swollen from crying. "They found you in the river," she whispered, barely breathing. "Did they find it?" "Find what?" "The creature." She swallowed. "They only found him." My stomach dropped. "The man?" She nodded. "They said he was mauled. They don't know by what." "And the creature?" Shauna shook her head. "No prints, no trail, nothing." But her voice trembled. "Aaron, whatever happened, it's not over, is it?" I turned my head toward the window outside. In the reflection, I saw it, just for a second. A pale face, a stretched smile, watching, waiting. I closed my eyes. "No," I whispered. "It's not over. It never was, and it never will be."